I'd like to call this January 31, 2023 meeting of the New York Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government to order. As a first order of business, I'd like to offer condolences to one of our commissioners, Commissioner Carney, on the passing of his mother last week. And we know these are always difficult and tough milestones in our human experience to have to encounter. But we wanted him to know that our thoughts and prayers are with Commissioner Carney and his family.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that.
Indeed. And it's hard to move from the sacred to the more mundane, but that's what is required of us this morning. So we will begin with approval of the minutes from December 16th. Approve those minutes. Commissioner Cardoza, a second. Commissioner James has seconded. Are there any corrections, revisions to those?
One.
Go ahead.
I have one on page 2. It's just a technicality. It states that a quorum of 7 commissioners were present. I think we just want to correct that to say a quorum was present with 7 commissioners. We wouldn't want to suggest that we need anything other than 6 for a quorum, just to avoid confusion.
Thank you. That's Commissioner Bromway. All right. Any other proposed changes? All right. All those in favor of the minutes as amended, as revised, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no.
Aye.
Those are the things we will catch with decision.
On the next set of minutes.
Abstaining. Abstaining since I was not at that meeting.
Got it. Okay. Let the minutes show that Commissioners Whittingham and Carvalho have both abstained because they were not on board at that time. All right. For the January 6, 2023 meeting minutes, is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Cardoza, Commissioner Carvalho, seconding. Any changes, revisions, corrections?
Who seconded the motion? Or who made it? Who made the motion?
Cardozo motion.
Thanks.
Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Ayes have it, minutes are approved.
Yeah, I'll abstain because I wasn't present.
Sure, and we're going to have an abstention, like an abstention for Commissioner James, who also was not at the January 6th. All right, so operations update, to our executive director.
Mr. Chairman, let me just add that this meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meetings law. We're going to here in New York, the New York State Conference Center, or open to the public during public session. That the operations report is behind AMC in the book, and as we have been doing, the report contains comparisons to the corresponding monthly period in the preceding year. So the report covers the period of December 2022. We have corresponding information for December of 2021, as well as cumulative information, which is for the full year. So it's a comparison of activity in 2022, activity in calendar year 2021, under the aegis of JCO, accepting in July of 2022. Staff is here to respond to any questions.
I wonder if you can just, Commissioner Brian, address some of the significant disparities from year to year. For example, notice that delinquency 17 in 2021, 125 in 2022. I have a couple other issues I have, but the numbers are so slightly different. I wonder if you could just give a brief explanation as to why.
I will ask our Director of Ethics and Acting Co-General Counsel, Keith St.
I didn't
John.
hear the question. I'm sorry, I did not hear the question at all. We can't hear you up here in Albany. I did not hear the question.
So the question is on page 4 of 7 under tab C. Why the disparities between, for example, the years where it comes to notice of delinquency and notices of delinquency and other significant changes from year to year. Can you explain that?
So in other words, the 125 versus the 17,
No.
Correct. Yes.
is that where we're at?
Yes.
Page 4 of 7.
Yeah, Laura, you may be able to really add information here. I believe it pertains to the timing of the notices of delinquency going out from the investigations unit. And the effect of COVID on staffing last year versus this year. With more staff in the office this year as opposed to staff in the office in 2021.
Yes, in fact, during the height of COVID, we're much more forgiving and just have to be here out there where they had reasons associated with the pandemic or their delays in complying with the financial disclosure statement requirements.
So if you didn't hear that, Executive Rick Berlin said
Repeating this.
that during COVID, we were much more relaxed in some ways in terms of having people meet their requirements. That gets reflected in the 2021 report. And in 2022, there was much more robust activity in terms of requiring people to meet their requirements. Commissioner Cardoza and then Vice Chair Austin.
Continuing with that question, though, on page 5, the number of employees who receive ethics training, the numbers are strikingly different the other way, that there was much more training in 2021 than in 2022. Is that a COVID explanation, but particularly given the statute that talks about training, I wonder why there was the change.
Is it 11,000 or is it 1,700? Well, there's an extra number in there, so.
Oh, gosh.
It's probably 1,700.
That's a typographical error and that's my mistake. It should be 1,778.
Right.
But again, is there an explanation? Is it the COVID explanation or some other, and particularly given the spotlight it's on training right now, it's an issue we should.
Just to reduce staffing during the transition.
Yeah, Commissioner, this is Megan Hennigan, Deputy Director of Training or Education. I think also there was a pause once the statute changed because we were trying to figure out, which training was going to qualify after the statute changed. So quite a few ethics officers said, until we get a little more guidance, we're going to hold off on doing some training. So if the number was lower this year, that's partly why.
Commissioner Whittingham. I'm sorry, Commissioner Austin.
Yeah,
Whittingham.
thank you. It was similar to, one was on the training. I see there was no change in December, but we'll accept that, and significantly declined in terms of lobbying training completed from 79 to 27 on page 5. So I had a similar question, but then I will go to page 6 where we see that the number of random financial disclosure reviews, 0 in December of 2022, there were 9. Why is that? Is there a reason for that as well?
So did you hear the question?
Yes.
Yes, we did hear the question, And I would have to check with the Deputy Director of Audit and Review for a precise answer. Um, Again, I think it's a function of the staffing. That is a very small unit in this agency. And so when one member of the staff is out, again, COVID related, it significantly impacts the, essentially the productivity of that unit. And so the discrepancy may be a factor of the impact of COVID in the office in 2021 versus 2022.
In addition, there's another reason that contributed to it. We had made a determination before the commissioners were able to convene and approve the staffing plan and delegating authority for us to do so, which includes the authority to conduct audits. We had made a determination that we could not compel filers to comply with audit requests. And in fact, we began to receive pushback, and we concluded that it was best to have our authority established. And this meant that the ordinary quarterly audit selection was delayed for a period of months. And then it was released when the delegation was made after the commission first convened on September 12th. So then we had to pick up at that point and issue the compulsory audit letters. That's procedurally well. Spent a fair amount of time in making that assessment, and we recognized it was going to create a little bit of a delay in the process for catching up. So we anticipate that the full number of audits will be conducted. But the cycle unfortunately got pushed back for the July, August, and September, part of September period, until we could resume issuing compulsory audit letters.
Commissioner James.
Ms. Berlin, I hate to interrupt, but we no longer have video for New York City.
Okay, seriously.
Yeah.
The public can see us, so if you can hear us, let us continue on. The public can't see New York City. I'm assuming they can hear New York City, since you can, but I don't know that for sure.
I don't believe the public can see you either.
Right, I see that now. Yeah. All right, well, we'll pause to see if we can get the camera back up here in New York City.
Okay, so. Excuse me.
This is worth the headline if all they come. First time this is.
Until figure it out and yeah.
Yes, we
I'm not seeing it on feed, but maybe there's a delay. All right, we are. So, Mr. James had a question.
Yeah, I understand that it's like September, October, these numbers are for December. It's curious that they no, he did no request for additional information.
So the question is, were there no random FDS reviews completed or requests for additional information in December?
That appears to be correct. I mean, you know, these rails, these requests for additional information and the random reviews, they're not done every month of every year. They're done throughout the year, and in any given month, there may be some done or none, and then the following month, there may be some done or none. So when they get done is not predetermined throughout the course of the year.
All right, other questions, comments? All right, the one thing I will just.
Senator Grunwald, Senator.
Wow, thank you.
Commissioner Silverby.
I don't know about that.
My history. I was back in the Senate for a moment.
Just one question. One thing that I know we've got multiple columns here, but relative to, I think the comment Commissioner James just made, one thing we can't see is the COLIG year-to-date number. So, and that's what I think is of interest to me. Obviously, the comparison to history is good, but when we're asking the question, were there none in December, we don't know what's the activity since this new commission was created by looking at these reports.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's almost as if, so with respect to the third column from the left,
Right.
which mixes both Jacob through the first
Right.
half of 2022,
Right.
and then Colig for the second half of 2022. Am I hearing you express some interest in having that column bifurcated? So
No,
that
I don't think it really matters anymore since we're done with 2022. It was just an observation of why the data could look a little confusing to some. That's all.
We can provide that at the next meeting, so you can see that, the level of activity.
But at the next meeting, it won't be relevant because we're in we'll have January, new year to date. We'll look at numbers for
Yeah.
January and we'll be at February. So it's really kind of a moot point at this point. It was more just how it could be confusing to try to understand what was going on for this body since its inception.
We'll gather
That's
that.
it. Sorry.
We have it, obviously. So we consolidated because we thought it would be useful to see a year to year, 12-month and 12-month. We can do that.
The public should be aware that from 2021 to 2022, in terms of the number of random FDS reviews completed, there was a huge jump, 21 to 22, 113 to 780. And in terms of requests for additional information, letters sent after a random review, the jump was from 45 in 21 to 271 in 22. So that would suggest some recovery, significant recovery from the impact of COVID on the operations here. Commissioner James.
If I might, before Commissioner James goes on to ask his question, I have a slight update with respect to the random review figures that have been reported. The Deputy Director informs me that the random reviews were finished earlier in the year, which explains why there were none reported for December of 2022. Because by December, the list of random reviews had already been exhausted. And what staff then went on to do, as opposed to random reviews, was to do targeted reviews.
Understood. Thank you. And we see that the targeted review number is pretty robust as well, for December. 84 and 612 for the year. All right, anything else under tab C, operations report? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to recruiting update.
Yes, the interviews of qualifying candidates has continued. We've extended offers of employment to a number of qualifying candidates. We're in the process of formulating offers to others. And we're continuing to identify qualified candidates for a few previously authorized positions. And we expect that we will be able to fill those positions relatively soon. And I'll provide more specific information as to that in the executive session.
And Albany, did you hear that report?
We did.
All right, budget update, tab D.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Mariana. As previously discussed, and this is FD again, we're continuing to run significantly under budget for personal services, and other personal services, the latter primarily as a result of outside counsel fees incurred by the former commission. And we're still under budget for the year by approximately, well, in excess of $2 million. Depending upon the number of additional hires we complete before the end of the fiscal year, which is the last day of March. We expect to continue to run under budget for the year. In addition, we did receive a payment of $237,236 on account of retroactive payments we had to pay staff in 2022. You have more specific questions, Mariana and I are happy to answer them. But essentially, the situation has not changed. As we add new employees to the payroll, we will draw down against personal services, not enough to exhaust the amount. And we have been able to use the excess in personal services to cover the shortfall on the non-personal services side. And if any commissioner is interested, I do have a breakdown of the non-personal services at a much more micro level that I can circulate.
So,
Commissioner James?
So I know you'll discuss in more detail personnel hires in executive session. But can you give us the numbers of positions that have been filled and how many are still vacant?
I can.
Commissioner James's question was a number of positions that will be recommended to be filled and then the number that are still open.
We will be filling it's about approximately 9 positions that we'll be filling and another 2 that we are continuing to recruit for. That's in the current staffing plan, in the interim staffing plan. With respect to the proposed staffing plan, there's a significant number of positions that we have not begun to recruit.
Sure, I think we should be clear about this. Those numbers are for the interim staffing plan that we have will take us through the end of this fiscal year, which ends end of March 30. And starting in the new fiscal year, our budget calls for a significant increase in staffing in order for the commission to carry out its mission as outlined in the legislation. Albany, any questions? Comments?
this brings us to,
Yeah.
this brings us to a total of how many staff,
We staff
full-time
down.
staff?
Full-time staff at this point.
We will go up to fill the existing positions to 49. I believe it's right. Mariana, is that correct? we hit 50?
Our FTEs is 48 for this fiscal year,
48.
so it'd be 48.
Any other questions or comments on the budget? All right, then let's proceed to it's a report on Executive Law 94, subsection 8, ethics and lobbying, training, tracking, and reporting requirements. E.
That we provided to the governor, leaders of the legislature, covering the period inception of the commission through the end of that quarter, through the end of September of 2022. The report spoke with respect to ethics training, called for by EGRA, and also addresses lobbying ethics training, both of which have been expanded. Workforce ethics training has now been extended to the entire government workforce. It applies to the legislators and legislative workforce as well. They're responsible ultimately for their own training. This agency and the executive agencies are responsible for training their respective workforces and general accountability. In that period of time, that is in that quarter, the third quarter of 2022, which is the first quarter of the expanded obligation, based upon reports from 324 out of 397, so it's roughly 73%. The overall, or 18% rather, of the overall workforce, a total of 12,394 trainings were conducted. We will be issuing the next quarter's report, which will be the last quarter of calendar quarter of 2022, in the next week or week and a half. That will add another almost 15,000 individuals to the training cohort. 14,971 additional individuals trained by our staff and by staff at the various agencies. We do know that training activity is picking up generally in the agencies and expected to continue to accelerate as we requested at the last meeting and as this commission approved. We're going forward with the process that will allow us to provide online, non-live ethics training, we believe, to at least 90% of the workforce. By the end of the calendar year, if sooner, we will do it sooner. It's just a question of getting the technology in place, having a system temporarily built so that we can monitor and track that training. And in tandem with that, we will be doing two things. We will be, through ITS, building a more sophisticated training, tracking, and scheduling system. Our current system was tailored to the population of FES filers, roughly 34,000 individuals who were required to receive comprehensive live training prior to EGRA. It's now somewhere in excess of 300,000 individuals. And the new system built, we're building that sometime in September so we can undertake live training. We have been in a discussion with the chamber about modalities for providing live in person or live online. The statute permits either. It's required to be a 90-minute course. And the agencies, and there was some publicity about this over the weekend in the New York Times. I think it was picked up in the New York Post as well. Agencies are varying in their capabilities and sources they have to meet that demand. And this is something that's going to evolve through the year, but we intend to move forward on two fronts. Again, providing purely online comprehensive training, essentially the recorded course, with a system for providing verifications. The course has been taken. and then at the same time building up a capability along with the agencies. We historically have only done a comparatively small percentage, 15, 16, 17% of the overall live training. Agency ethics officers and others handle the balance of it. And we anticipate the mix remaining essentially like that once the live in person or live online, we roll out to that large cohort. But we are looking at alternatives to, such as a concentrated center, jointly funded by agencies, with trainers we would train to provide the training, and management oversight probably from this agency, but that could be a joint thing as well.
So for the public information, we are saying that by the end of this fiscal year, this calendar year, 2023, we anticipate having 90% of the workforce over which we have jurisdiction trained as required by ECRA.
Well,
And related.
ECRA does permit this agency to make a determination of whether there's good cause to defer the requirements. And the commission found at its last meeting that indeed it would be impossible for this agency and the affected agencies, the employing agencies, to provide live training to 300,000 plus employees, live in person or live online, within that time frame. Instead, what we're doing in the interim is providing an online course, which will replicate, but it won't be live interactive as called for by the statute in this first run. It'll be a recorded course, but we believe we can provide that and we can verify that up to 90% of the state workforce. If we can reach more, we'll reach more, but our understanding of the technological capabilities and some of the other challenges that exist in providing that kind of training are such that it's more difficult, certainly not impossible, to reach that remaining 10%. And while we're providing that training, we will be working with the agencies and with the executive chamber to devise a methodology and a system so that the live in-person, live online training thereafter can be provided a much larger cohort. In the meantime, we and the agencies are going to continue to do the live training that has historically been suspended if possible. Sources exist. It's not being suspended, but in the past, roughly 34,000 should continue to receive that level of training, but that's not much more than 10% of the overall total. In addition, we're targeting providers who under ECRA are to receive live in-person or live online training in case of fire. The agencies are endeavoring to do that as well.
Is that clear? Did everyone hear that? Right. Mr. Cardozo, and then we should.
So I understand that the statute also requires training of lobbyists, the heads of lobbying organizations.
Yes.
I think that's new and with the plans.
Lobbyists have been subjected to mandatory training previously. ECRA adds training of lobbying clients.
So that's fine. Yeah.
So that adds another 4,500 to that. And Carol and Carol Quinn, who heads our lobbying unit, has collaborated, I would say, with the lobbying community generally. Right, and on the 18th, on January 18th, rolled out a new and improved system for lobbyists and lobbying clients to comply with their lobbying. That is not live training. That is essentially an online. It's not recorded. It's kind of slide. It's a mixed sort of thing that many people. But it's been well received so far, and hundreds of clients have already taken, even though they have till mid-March To complete the report.
March right now, only have 60 days. Everyone that submitted a statement of, basically any statement of registration for 23-24 that was submitted on or before January 18th, which is a couple weeks ago when we launched this, they get until March 18th to take the training. Everyone else, March 19th and thereafter, gets the 60 days based on the submission date of a registration. So I think what the judge was about, so we were estimating about 13,000 individuals, lobbyists and clients will have to take this training. But it's based on a submission of a 23-24 registration. So right now, since a couple weeks ago, a little over 1,000, 1,121 lobbyists or clients have already taken the training. About 6,500 were currently required to take the training, meaning they are listed on a submitted 23-24 registration. So, but of those 60, they have until March 18th. So I'm excited all about it. I think we've made good progress. There's been a decent amount of people who have already taken it and I expect that everyone will be able to take it within their 60-day deadline.
Would it be possible to make both types of training available for the commissioners to watch if they want?
So the online the lobbyist and client training is actually on our website, freely accessible to anyone, including the commissioners, and it's right on our website. You can take it right.
Would that be true for the staff training as well?
Yeah, one of the models we're using involves putting it on our website. Safe web hosting types that were used. This is a test for the interim program that we're putting in place. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes.
Yes, just for clarification, so if I understand correctly, we will not accomplish the goal set out by NYCRR for live and online live or in-person live. We are merely continuing, at least for this year, 90% of online training that was in existence before. Was it accessible online before that someone could take this training and we're just doing purely online? Because I just want to clarify, because it doesn't sound like we will have more than the 30,000+, which, as you said, is just over 10% of those being live or on interactive live stream.
I anticipate that we'll do better than the 34,000. I say we, but I mean we collectively, we and the employing agencies. We know from conversations we've had that some agencies have been able to reach more employees than others. So I think the number is going to be substantially larger. We won't know until the cycle, you get more deeply into the cycle. I think we may see it in the next quarter that we're starting now, January, February, March, calendar quarter. It's not the same training we provided before. The old comprehensive course was a 2-hour course. Now the statute calls for a 90-minute course. So it's more concentrated. Our training staff has created alternative versions of the training as well, because now there's a more diverse workforce that's going to be receiving the training. So it's not just targeted at policymakers and threshold filers. It reaches the entire workforce. So there are going to be different versions of the comprehensive training. The online vehicle we're using is.
But the method is the same.
Technology, push it out, to make it available, and to have the certifications. And we're going to have to rely on the agencies themselves to schedule the trainings by their employees. We're going to set a target date by which the training can be concluded. We're not going to have a system as we do now that's capable of doing this 300,000 employees. That will take at least until the fall for ITS to build for us.
The method, however, I think is what I'm getting at, will be the same as prior to NYCRR requiring this. So for the majority of the training that will take place this year, it's going to be via the same vehicle as previously, which was just online. And I think that's what they were trying to move away from when it said live in person or live stream, where it can be interactive. None of these will be interactive.
The old system was live interactive.
Okay.
And it was only on a 3-year cycle. So
Limited.
for 34,000 or so for FDS filers, so policymakers and threshold filers. They had to take the initial CETC course, and then 3 years later, they would take another live course. There was also a short orientation course. But the CET substituted for it if the individual took CETC training before taking the orientation training. So the live training is always there. But for roughly a tenth the number of individuals. So the number of trainers required, and now it's a 2-year cycle rather than a 3-year cycle. So the number of trainings that have to take place is more than tenfold. It's probably something more in the neighborhood of 14 or 15 threshold of the number of trainers you need and trainings that have to be conducted. So we're introducing a new vehicle, providing a planned training, but it's done to be recorded training. That will be new. I've been providing that before. The Executive Office of Employee Relations had an online ethics course that they provided. They have discontinued that. So that was an online course that many in the workforce took. That's no longer available, but that was not a live course. And we have looked at whether, and one of the vehicles we may well use is their a state learning management system that we are used. That captures about 60% of the workforce. We've met with their technical people and their executives. They can't host live trainings online, but they can, if we want, mount the video for us and provide verification. We're just thinking it may be more efficient. It's one of the options we're looking at in rolling this out. I think it may be more efficient to put it on our website, or we may use multiples. But not every agency is in the state learning management system. But other agencies do have their own learning management systems that are similar to SLMS. And those two will provide vehicles, but none of that's live. Live will require an expansion of the existing capabilities and of the employing agencies.
Commissioner James.
So are we supplementing the live online and live in-person training with the straight online training, or are we abandoning the live online and live training for exclusively online training?
We're supplementing. We want the agencies to continue, and if they can, expand the amount of live they're doing, but at least do the cohort, at least the quantity they were doing before, and add in new hires who have to be trained within 90 days. So the idea ultimately is to expand our capability for scheduling and verifying monitoring compliance from 34,000 to over 300,000. And for us and the agencies to expand our live training live online to reach that size audience. You're told by ITS that they can have the system that is for scheduling and monitoring. And it's saying September, they'll achieve that.
I think my question is, when do we get there for live training, whether it's in person or online, for, let's say, 90% of the workforce that we have jurisdiction?
I'm targeting not this year, but 2024 as the year in which we will be able to make have the capability to train the entire. And it may have to be done in biannual sequences. Rather than building a training course that can train 300,000 people a year and then not, this is a 2-year cycle, not have that responsibility the following year, split it. That will be up to the commission. We'll come back with specific proposals. I would hope we can ramp up gradually during that time, but I think it's unrealistic. But not necessarily out of the question to achieve 300,000 trainings in this calendar year.
Let me see if I can sum up a couple of key points. One is that by the end of this calendar year, 90% of the workforce will be trained. Majority of that will be straight online training, but some percentage will be live, whether that's in-person live or virtually live. At a minimum, about 34,000, but we hope it will be more than that. And then by the end of calendar year 2024, we hope a substantial increase in that, let's say at 90%, will be get in-person training, either virtual, we'll get live training, either virtual or in person. So there may be a recommendation that we stagger that, since it's biennial training, and rather doing all 300,000 in 1 year, we do half of that in 1 year and half of that in the next, and just have it on a rolling basis. Is that clear? So Vice Chair Austin, and I want to see if anyone in Albany has a comment.
I just had a quick question. There are 397 state agencies involved. Has there been good cooperation from the agencies in facilitating the program?
I would say yes. The agency ethics officers all understand the requirement. They have been doing all they can to develop their resources, make budgetary requests so that they can organize their workforces. And while we haven't necessarily received the data back from all of them, I expect that reporting to improve as we move forward. I think the numbers are actually quite robust, considering the newness of the requirements and the order of magnitude difference in the requirement. And I should make clear, and I know everyone on this commission and everyone on staff agrees with us. We think this is a fabulous requirement. We think one of our roles is to ensure that the entire workforce understands their ethical obligations. That's the first entree into having an ethical workforce. So we invite it. It is a huge challenge having it incept without any ramp-up period built into the statute. So it's created a huge challenge for everyone, but I do think there's an eagerness across the board to meet that challenge. And I think folks are working very, very hard. I think these numbers, the first quarter numbers, I think are quite good. And the second quarterly report numbers last quarter of 2022 are very, very encouraging. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Excellent. Albany, any, Commissioner Groenewegen, Commissioner Carney? Right.
Nothing there. Thank you.
Assume that we need more money to ensure this is done. That is budget request.
Yes, our budget request as our proposed staffing plan. So that calls for an augmentation of the training staff, adding more trainers, adding more training assistants, adding more ethics attorneys who serve a multiple. And you anticipate as it's more training, more requests for guidance will come. It's greater sensitivity, awareness, workforce of ethical obligations and ethical constraints. So yes, and we also have money allocated for the IT work that needs to be done to realize this.
So we're going to anticipate a robust and unwavering commitment on the part of those who are responsible for our budget to ensure that we have the resources that we need so that every state employee who is under the jurisdiction of this commission gets the training that's required under ECRI. Anything else on this issue of training, etc.? All right, communications update.
Simply, we have continued to work with Marathon Strategies, again, to don't have in place patients. Filling out shortly. Working with Marathon Strategies contract runs February.
We can't hear. We can't hear here in Albany.
If you could keep your voice up, we'd appreciate that.
It's my view, and I think it's staff's view, and I believe commissioners agree that Marathon has been extremely helpful to us in getting the word out. The many things we're doing that have been extremely helpful. They've been helpful in getting word out on a training initiative. They've been very helpful lobbying, training, getting the word out on that. Carrollsburg has been extremely effective in doing that as well. I think it's been a productive relationship, and I think it has added significantly to our efforts in
That's great, and it's nice to be able to speak directly to the public through certain vehicles, one of which was the executive director's long form interview on Capitol Confidential
press room.
in the press room that's online that you can access, as well as the recent op-ed in the Times Union, and we hope for more of that ongoing and direct. Also, as the executive director said, being able to communicate to the public about the training and other activities that this commission is doing to fulfill the mandate of the legislation that brought us into being. Other comments here on communication? All right, procedures and guidelines.
Yes, staff has been working on, has prepared a number of very preliminary drafts for commissioners' consideration. Guidelines and so on. An appropriate committee for further action.
Keep his voice up.
We've lost it again. We can't hear.
The statement from the executive director was that there will be a number of procedures and guidelines that the staff will present to us. We'll refer those to the appropriate committee of the commission for review.
Thank you.
Sure. Item 4 on the agenda, proposed regulation authorizing the issuance of subpoenas and other process by the executive director as delegated by the commission. There is a motion to adopt the proposed regulation amending Adjudicatory Proceedings and Appeals Process Regulations 19 NYCRR Part 941 to add a new 941.3 subsection A. So you want to talk to us about that?
Yes, under tab F, this provision, this amendment, was originally adopted by the commission on an emergency basis at the October 6th commission meeting. It went into effect on an emergency basis on October 26th. The rulemaking began. It was published in the State Register. It was extended. The emergency adoption was extended at December meeting. It's now on for permanent adoption. The comment period actually expired in December. However, a number of watchdog groups requested an extension of time, which we consented to receive their comments after the agenda and the agenda book was prepared. The commission does refer to this provision. There's no concern or effect given. Simply note some of the provisions that are in it, particularly with respect to notification care before subpoenas are issued by staff. And then advising the commission at large at its next meeting that such subpoenas have or will be issued in investigative matters. And it correlates to a provision in subsection 10 of section 94 of the Act of Law that permits such a by staff, and it parallels another provision of subsection 10, which vests in staff the authority after conducting a preliminary review to elevate in the statute a matter into a formal investigation. A little bit different from the practice in the prior night.
Mr. Cardozo.
I would say that for this question, I assume what's for us is identical to what we adopted on a emergency basis. Yes. I would suggest that since we have now a committee that's looking into the whole question of delegation, this be adopted only on a continuing emergency basis until the committee has had an opportunity to review all the issues relating to delegation. And then the committee would be making a recommendation. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, I just don't know. And so I would suggest, just as I suggest for the next resolution, that it be adopted only on an emergency basis until the committee has had an opportunity to review all of those issues.
So Commissioner, it's actually not necessary to adopt an emergency basis right now because we have the first one under F and the second one under G. So F is already already adopted on an emergency basis through March 10th. So that would give us a whole other meeting to discuss this. And then under attachment G, the other rulemaking, that one's good as an emergency through March 24th. So we do have time. We don't have to readopt anything on an emergency basis today. That's already in place.
So the chair will, move the table. There's a motion to table and seconded. So the motion was made by Vice Chair Austin. It was seconded by Commissioner Whittingham to table these until the March meeting. For now, that's the motion. Any more discussion?
Just point of information. March meeting, I believe, is on March 21st. So we may have to. Can we extend again, Carol, for another 30 days?
Yeah.
Right. So if we do that, we will have to take it up again on an emergency basis.
That works.
Well, because, yes, at that time, it might be necessary if the special committee have not as yet put forward the recommendations by the February to extend it again.
Albany, Commissioner Groenewegen, Commissioner Carney, any comments here?
No comments?
Just add one thing. In addition, we'll have it on an emergency basis. The regulation does also authorize staff following the same procedure, that is notification to the chair and informing the commissioners at large at the next occurring commission meeting of the intention to communicate outside the agency in connection with a preliminary review. That's equally important to us in dealing with matters as they come in the door.
So
I just want that to be clear.
three major issues here: subpoenas, on the presentation to the chair and then the full board at the following meeting. Opinions?
Opinions are not protected by this, but the ability of staff to communicate, investigative and enforcement staff, to communicate with individuals outside the commission because of the constraints of Executive Order 9411, which otherwise require approval to communicate outside the agency. There's an anomaly that we could issue subpoenas, but not.
So subpoenas, communication, and then elevating something from a review to an investigation.
Again, as provided in the statute, it is repeated in the larger amendment to Part 941 to the investigative.
My goal here is to try to make sure that that my aunt, in the Bronx, she could understand what it is that we're doing, and that the average citizen of the state of New York can clearly understand what we're doing. So we're deferring a permanent adoption of 2 resolutions that would have allowed us to delegate to staff several activities, issuing of subpoenas, elevating investigations from a review, elevating cases from a review to an investigation, as well as communicating with outside parties about these activities. These are the sort of 3 big pieces of this. Staff currently has that authority under emergency legislation and under emergency adoption of a resolution by this group. And we're delaying a permanent adoption of that delegation of authority until our special committee on guidance procedures has had a chance to do some of its work. Have I summed it up correctly?
That's right. Yeah, yes, and it also provides staff with the ability to conduct investigations and enforcement proceedings, which many of the amendments in Part 941 are essentially conforming, changing the name of the agency, repairing cross-references, change, that sort of thing, as well as the communications policy.
Sure.
What's authorized.
So one of those to be clear about those major pieces. All right. So there's a motion to table these two resolutions 4 and 5. All those in favor of that motion to table, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If I may, they are tabled.
Until the next meeting, yes. All right. Public hearing?
Yes, thank you. We have tentatively scheduled a public hearing that is called for by the statute for March 29th. Our plan, subject to further reconsideration, to have a live venue, an auditorium, or a large hearing room in Manhattan to receive live testimony. We would also receive written testimony. The hearing would be conducted online as well, so participate and testify could do so remotely. We will also meeting room, use a remote site for it. As contemplated, Executive Law 94, subsection 4I, one purpose of the hearing would be to solicit input from the public regarding potential or proposed changes in the laws. The jurisdiction of the commission is also to take testimony in the operation of the commission at that point in time. Staff is also proposing that in addition, of the hearing and the scope of the hearing also include a matter related to that's called for by Executive Law 94E, that is the comprehensive review of all regulations in effect of ACRA, as well as a review of all advisory opinions predecessor ethics agencies. And the Ethics Commission, and to address the consistency of all such regulations and advisory opinions among each other and with new statutory language, and of the effectiveness of these existing laws, regulations, guidance, and ethics enforcement structure. So it would be an even broader hearing than it's required by the statute. Staff's perspective, this would help inform the Commission's review of all those bodies of precedent and existing law and our procedures.
Okay. So public meeting, March 29th. Yes.
I looked at my calendar. I wish I had known about this before. I have theater tickets that night, and I will not be able to attend. And I think it's going to be in the evening.
No, it's not. Our plan was to conduct it in morning and afternoon.
Very true.
Questions,
Scheduled to be in California that week.
comments?
And Nancy.
Did you?
Nancy,
I'm just scheduled to be in California that week.
you can attend remotely from California.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Is it a vacation? Yeah, I don't know if you want to do that.
So March 29th for public hearing, morning and afternoon, and specific times are coming.
Just
What's that?
publish a
Yeah, right. I know, that's why I'm not keeping my mouth shut with me.
communicate with as many different interest groups as we can think of to be sure that everyone.
That is our plan. We would be reaching out specifically to groups across the state that may have an interest in commenting and whose comments particularly like to have this process.
I think to that same end, we need to detail the scope, because I just heard you going on and add other stuff, and it's like 60 days away from here. So want to make sure everyone has the time and know what it is that they are able to comment and give feedback on.
It would be good to do the announcement on our website, webpage, landing page, with the scope of the hearing outline. All right? We okay here?
That's the plan. We have a draft that will circulate all of this.
The next item on the agenda is our question of the per diem policy as provided in Executive Law 94, subsection 4, subsection F. Because there are some legal issues surrounding this, we will take it up first in executive session, and then we will come back and report out to the public our discussion about this policy. Is there any new or other business for the public session? Hearing none, is there a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law 105 and Executive Law 994, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, an investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to section 94 of the executive law? Is there such a motion? Is there a second? So a motion was made by Vice Chair Austin, seconded by Commissioner Carvalho. All those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are now in executive session. Thank you. And we'll be back a little bit later in the afternoon.
Just wait a moment.
Okay, please stand by while we
So
We're live.
to the reconvening of our January 31, 2023 meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. We are going to report out now on our deliberations while in executive session, and we're going to ask Executive Director Berlin to give us a summary of what transpired in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation, legal advice, and personnel related matters. In addition, the commission discussed legal matter concerning executive law section 94 sub 4 sub F, the per diem policy. In addition, the commission approved informal guidance pursuant to executive law section 94.7, and it discussed an outside activity approval request pursuant to Part 932 of the commission's regulations. Also, the commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed one such matter, and discussed several other investigative matters. I also want to note that Commissioner Claudia Edwards participated during a portion of the meeting pursuant to Public Officers Law Section 103-A upon the chair's determination that except in extraordinary circumstances prevented her from participating in person at the meeting.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this report out from Executive Director Berlin? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there such a motion?
So most.
Commissioner Whittingham, is there a second? Commissioner Cardoza, so the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the staff, thanks to the commissioners, and thanks to the public. Thank you all.